Welcome to our first RTI title webinar. We're so excited to be launching this today. We wanted to start first just talking a little bit about the purpose of this webinar. One of the things that we noticed when we all met in August is that people were saying that we just don't have enough time as title and RTI teachers to really get together and share ideas and resources and strategies for students. So that's the big goal here, is just to help us connect. And as we're going through the webinar series over the next few months, I think we'll see that we're going to be touching base on a lot of different questions, but the big goal there is to hit questions that are very timely.
As we launch this discussion,
I do want to introduce our guests for the day who have been very brave to jump out and do this first webinar. We have Marianne Baker with us, and Marianne is currently a teacher at Agnerhurt Elementary School. Prior to teaching at Agnerhurt, she's also been a professor at the University of Virginia. We also have Vicki Chin with us, and Vicki is brand new to Albemarle County but has been teaching for about 12 years. And Vicki is the person that is really working with the students that we're going to be talking about first today. She's been the one who's been doing some literacy instruction with her and working on the assessment, and has the question about what do I really do next for this young lady. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome.
I'm Vicki Chen, and as Andrew has mentioned, I am the one who works very closely with this particular girl that we're going to be talking about today. Just kind of give you a little bit of background. My school, I'm at Yancey Elementary, and it's a very, very small school. It's about 120 students, and our setup is very different in that it's a multi-age classroom. So within each classroom, you have an either primary, which is a kindergarten through second grade, students all mixed in together, and then you have the intermediates from third grade through fifth grade. And so there are 3 classrooms of each primary and intermediate, and she's part of the primary classroom. I work with her during ELT time, which is for 30 minutes, and during that time there are a lot of questions that come up because of more behavior as well as academic progress. So once again, she's a first grade girl, and some of her behaviors that we've noticed this year has been crawling under table. She's been walking out of the classroom without permission. She's very non-compliant, especially when it comes to doing things that she might not understand or know what to do. She also has very limited social skills, working on saying please and thank you, and she responds very poorly to verbal directions. And she cannot write her name at the beginning of the year. Now, she does write her name, however, it's all capital letters. So she hasn't transitioned into lowercase yet.
and I think you were saying that socially some of her behaviors may have improved as well.
Yes. She still crawls under tables, but not as frequently. She continues to walk out. It's actually now has increased. And I don't know if that's her way of handling stress or handling, I don't want to do this, I don't know how. If that's her way of, okay, I'm going to leave this area, walk around, and she does wander the halls. And she's still non-compliant, and she's still working on please and thank you.
Okay. And she was at your school last year?
Yes, she was.
Okay.
And last year was a little bit different because it's your traditional, one grade classroom. And there were behaviors then too, but not to the extreme that we're seeing now.
Okay, so you've done PALS?
Yes.
And this is where you found her at the beginning of the year.
Yes, and so taking a look for first quarter, which is, we took that in October, beginning of October. She had a total of 13, and the benchmark is at 41. And she recognized, she was able to produce 12 letter sounds out of 26. She was only able to spell one, beginning sound. She got 1 credit, 1 point for her spelling out of 44, and that I believe was beginning sound. I think, if I remember correctly too, her PALS, she actually just had that 1 letter and the rest of them were blank. And then she had 4 out of 5 for concept of word and 3 out of 10 for word ID, 1 out of 10 for the word list, and then 22 out of 26 for lowercase alphabet. And then because of that, we went further to doing blending in sound to letter, and she's got 1 out of 6 for blending and 5 out of 40 for sound to letter.
Okay.
Yeah, and then taking a look then on the second quarter, she made some improvement. However, it's not where she should be at this time of the year. And so you can see that she went from 12 to 15 sounds, 4 out of 52 for spelling. And you'll see actually later on there will be a picture of her spelling assessment, and you'll see that it's all just beginning sounds for that, but actually it was better than last quarter. And then 4 out of 5 the concept of words, so she's still lacking that.
Exactly the same place for concept of words.
Yep.
So that would be the accurate tracking that we're looking for in that thing.
Yep, but she went up for 7 out of 10 word IDs.
Nice.
Yeah. But still have that once it's got that random list, 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Not recognizing, just being able to pinpoint that first sound even.
So with context, she's locating 7 of the words. Without context, she's only locating 3. It's interesting, her sounds, she only went up 3, but she has 15 of the 26. That's surprising to me. Yeah, in a good way.
Yes, and then a 24 lowercase letter recognition. I'm pretty sure it's probably that P, Q, B, and D differences. So,
one of the things that you mentioned is she may embellish a little bit as she reads to you.
Oh, yes. We are, right now with her ELT time, we are doing SIPS program, and that actually is a program that is very, yes, and very systematic. And so it goes through, you will have a reread of last book that you guys talked about, and then you'll have oral blending, and then they'll have a blending where they read the words and do the sounds themselves. There'll be a segmenting part, and then there'll be a spelling, guide to spelling, and then there'll be a new book. So it's got all those components in that 30-minute block time. And I've seen her now for over 20 sessions, and you could tell even just for her spelling, she does not have beginning, middle, and ending. And so that's a very huge disappointment to know that she's not carrying those skills across.
Right. So just like for all those emergent learners, we're working towards that concept of word to show itself in reading and writing and spelling.
And then even just when she embellishes, it'll be like if a book, it's like, you know, the hat is on the man, and she'll go, the hat is on the man, or the hat is on the man, and then she'll add on to it and say the hat is on the man who is at the tree or something along those. So she'll continue with the story even though she has landed at the end. She's completed her thought. She could see the picture. She's using picture clues and then adding more to the story. So,
okay. So we want to take a look at what she's receiving now. So traditional kindergarten last year, and this is what she's getting now.
Yes, we're still doing guided reading, and we're still doing that daily 5 kind of rotation. So she's receiving in her own classroom, being provided at a kindergarten level, 5 days a week, a 90-minute per day session, and she works through the stations. It's not cafe or day 5, but it's a mixture of that. And the structure is that there will be mini lessons for exposure to skills that she needs, which is typically at a kindergarten level. And there will be one teacher who works with her on word study, and the diagraphs, which is what she was working on, and she's now moving on to blending. And then she has a session on read yourself, and then there's a 30 minutes of being a writer as a whole class, small group, and then there's a one teacher for doing her guided reading time.
So just to point out to folks that this is actually another station that she's rotating to, that they're reading, they're writing, read yourself, and word study. So that's her tier 1. What is your tier 2 looking like?
That's where she works with me for ELT time, and we've already been over 20 sessions, and these are the ones we talked about, focusing on following, using SIPs, blending and segmenting sight words.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the sample?
Sure. This is a writing sample. Actually, it's the current winter writing sample. As you could tell, it's from January 14th, and it is a writing on what she would do as a superhero. And so this is a guided process with lots of support from teacher. And the first thing is like, what would she want to be as a superhero? And then next is what would she do? What were her powers? And how would she fight or, do to be a superhero? And she's only completed 1 box of that. And even with that, you can't really tell. There aren't any really sight words that she's using appropriately and correctly, and you know that there's no space between words, and I'm not even quite sure what that picture really is.
I don't know. I think we can move this. So it looks like the graphemes are all letters, just starting with some positives there. Her directionality seems in place. As you mentioned, we don't have spaces, and we don't really think it relates to what she's labeling as her picture. Okay. And I think you said she had a lot of help with this?
She does, but it's also a winter sample that we're taking to kind of rate. So we're not giving the support that we normally would.
Oh, I see.
But it's also helping her through the process.
Okay.
And you can tell that she hasn't completed the 3 boxes. And at this point, I believe that she also has walked out of the classroom. Mm-hmm.
So perhaps after completing this, please.
It could have been.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I think probably for all of us who teach, we get a little nervous in January, especially considering we've had a year of this. And and my understanding is we want to turn it over to folks out there just to put it out there to you. What ideas have you used in class that might help a student that fits this profile? But obviously one-to-one comes up. So we think about one-to-one really intensive intervention.
And I do actually doing such time. It's a small group of 5 students, but because of the behavior, and she's walking out the room, but she's not being dropped down, and I pull her.
Yeah, consistency is really. And I know SIPS is relatively new in the county. I'm not very well versed in it. It's very sequential, right?
And it's
you mentioned
thematic.
Okay, and you mentioned it does involve contextual reading, and the words within that, there is blending and segmenting and really a dissection of those words.
As well.
And sight words, right. One of the things that I would just ask to get a bigger picture is, are there, I'm sure there are, plenty of read-alouds. Is she engaged in the read-aloud so that her listening comprehension perhaps is deepening?
Yes. Part of the, 30-minute sessions for whole group time when introducing the skills is read aloud. And she would pick a book on her own when we have extra time left over to look through. And she'll look at the pictures, but she's not really engaged in looking for words that she might recognize. And she does like listening to stories.
Excellent. Now, I would say that's maybe the best news that we've heard. How about an interest inventory in that? What books specifically might she like to peruse? What if she could, maybe the superhero, I know we don't get a lot of choice with the prompts, but what would she choose to, what are her interests in reading and writing?
Just even in my room, she has geared toward more animal. Things about animals and pictures about animals. So those are some books that she might be interested in.
So I'm going to not very smoothly move to, we have a question, so I'm going to try to go to it. Hi, Angie. We'd love to hear your comments. Angie asks, how does she respond to the use of technology? For example, would it be helpful for her to create a digital collection of sight words and record her own voice saying the words? She could practice on her own, see the words, and hear herself saying the words. Kim says, I wonder if she might engage or be motivated to have an older peer book buddy, an ideal 4th or 5th grader who might read to her and then do an innovative creative writing from that. Thus, she would be building her own library of books to reread that she has written. What great ideas when we go back to the LEA or the language experience activity or approach. We do build our own personal reader, and if these were things that she was invested in, I feel like we get a lot of bang for the buck there.
Yeah, and those are some things that I could definitely bring back to her primary teacher.
We're going to move to Monique. I think Monique has something to add. Be patient with me, Monique.
Just wanted to know is she responsive to listening comprehension? Is she able to understand when text is either being read to her or she's listening to books on paper?
Okay, just to recap, Monique asked us what her listening comprehension was like, if she's able to understand books that are read to her, or if she's listening to books on tape.
I think at this level she can understand explicit questions. Anything that's implicit is not going to be something that she's familiar with or understand how to answer those questions. And the other question was?
In terms of whether or not her, and you essentially answered it, and that was whether or not her listening comprehension, you felt comfortable with that, because often that's an indication of cognition. Right? So they can respond to text and provide details, then that's often an indication of cognition. So yeah, I think you pretty much answered the question. Thanks. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
That was very encouraging. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that's a really good point, Monique. Thank you for isolating the listening comprehension. Yeah, we know if it's not a really good match that the child will not be very engaged, and certainly those implicit questions are so much harder. I'm hoping, Kim, that you're not feeling terribly put on the spot. We're hoping to ask you to explain more about your experience with older students and how you structure their time. So I'm going to put it on talk for you. Oh, by the way, this is related to the Book Buddies idea that we had for this student.
Hi, everyone. So my thought with that was that she might be more likely to engage and invest in her literacy time if it were peer connected. I understand behavioral concerns may first need to be addressed, and whichever intermediate peer she worked with would need to be prepped for how to handle a under-the-table behavior or a walking out behavior. But it just instantly occurred to me how much children invest when they are put with a peer, and often care more about their behavior and their work when they're with a peer rather than adults sometimes. My personal experience has been very rewarding with that, but just 30 minutes once a week of working together, and again, so that her instruction is tailored and matched to her interests. She could pick the read aloud and then use that read aloud as an exemplar to write her own book, and then go back and have that for rereading and sight word building and wherever it leads. But I would just be curious to know how she might respond, engage, connect with having a peer literacy teacher for a little chunk of each week.
Kim, just want to thank you for chiming in about that. Certainly, we don't want to ever forget about feeling part of the community. I know that your community is building, everybody's working together for her, and feeling challenged, but still working on that community. I love your idea that if she works with an older buddy, that she picks the read aloud. We know that choice is a huge motivator, and that also we build on that. So if anybody couldn't hear, Kim suggested that she has an older buddy for 30 minutes once a week. She picks the read aloud, the buddy reads it, then she writes from that, her own story, using that book as a model. She works on her sight word vocabulary from that, uses it for rereading, and so on. We have another question coming. So the question was, would you introduce new sounds at this point, or would you keep working on the same sounds?
We have been, part of the SIPS program is to continue to review the sounds and the sight words and then continue to build that bank up. And so the sounds and letters that she doesn't know has been reviewed every day. And I do work with her 4 to 5 days a week, and for 30 minutes each of those sessions. So she should be getting all of those. But for her, it's just really hard to retain the information. So the question would be, do we continue on? And that's where we are at this point. What do I do next? What do we do next with her and for her?
One of the things that you'll hear from me is the Curry School of Education slipping out. And so I would also address the listening level, just because we know all literacy begins at that listening level, and give her not only a sense of community, which I'm sure she has one, but also to have her build on, a purpose. Having that buddy will be a great purpose for her to show up for that 30-minute time period and then build on that through the week. What is language? How do we use language? I think those, maybe we need to go back and articulate all of that. But particularly with the listening level, even simple things like she has to identify a sound somewhere in the room, or play the game where everybody does it. She is in first grade but participating in a kindergarten class, literacy class instruction. Identifying sounds, trying to figure out where the sounds are, that enables her to develop her memory or give her a language to talk about language. So she is, we're going from the macro to the micro, so the whole language piece down to eventually to these phonemes, to letters and sounds, but first being able to articulate about language. I will just share a couple resources. These are old folks, Marilyn Adams, Barbara Foreman, and so on, and they have a very nice descriptor, I believe, of the hierarchy of language development. It says that we're going to work on rhyming, certainly, and then go from the words and sentences level to phrases and syllables, and then when they get closer to concept of word, that initial and final sound. Finally, phonemes. You know, we know the phonemes are necessary but not sufficient to read. Their understanding is the best predictor of reading success later on, but it's a tough skill that continues to develop over time. So I know we worry she's in first grade, but I'm wondering about backing up to that listening level. The Phonological Awareness Handbook for Kindergarten and Primary Teachers is a really nice one for citing research about what kids need and when and why. I think we have another question. Can we revisit the technology question? What apps or other programs would you use to support her sight word development? Thank you, Claire. We would love to hear about your apps. You all have literacy apps that you would recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as all of those recommendations are coming in, I just don't want you to forget about the vocabulary building. This is the emergent, words their way, emergent sorts. Just to give language to, this is the fruit versus non-fruit sorts. So just a way to, maybe you're reading rah-rah radishes, and then there's a hands-on activity for her to develop her language following. How about LEAs we hear, where she can harvest sight words from her self-generated stories? I'm not sure there's a better self-made textbook out there than when kids are writing and rereading about things that are of their own experiences. So love that idea. You can always go back and highlight different words, different features, draw pictures. To me, that's the ultimate textbook, if you will, for emergent readers. Oh, of course. The question is, can you share the authors for the book shared? I'm guessing you know these authors. So Marcia Invernizzi et al. For the Words Their Way. Okay, so et al. Is Francine Johnston, Don Baer, and Shane Templeton. The Phonological Awareness Handbook is Lisa Erickson and Maura Huyevo. The Barbara Foreman text also has Marilyn Adams, Ingvar Lundberg, and Terry Beeler. One of the things I'm wondering if we can do, and would welcome any participation about this, is just to sum up some of the positives. Again, January seems to scare all of us teachers. We want to see lots of progress. So if we think about some of the positives, she has grown on her PAL scores. She enjoys books and being read to. We think she may be open to the buddy, having an older buddy, we think. She does choose books to flip through when that is an option. She has gone from identifying 3 words following the concept of word task to 7, and then 2 in isolation, 3 in isolation. Okay, so noted slow growth, but there is growth. Did you mention how she spells her name now?
It's all capital letters.
All caps, but spelled correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. For the majority of the time, every so often she'll drop a letter here and there.
Yeah.
But so it's not solid, but majority of the time, I'll say 90% of the time, she does have them correct.
Okay. So spelling her name correctly.
She's gotten to actually shorten it, which because it's rather long, and so she's gotten to where that she just nicknamed herself.
So we want to thank you all for being so patient with our bumbling through this first attempt, and for just being there, for joining in the conversation. We know we're all better together, so we thank you for that. We think our next steps are, can we kind of summarize where we think we'll go? So we have the issue of behavior, we have the issue of very limited growth, so we're talking a little bit more about the possibility. We don't know if it's possible to go one-on-one with the student, to perhaps back up to the listening level, to certainly tap into her own interests, build on language experience activities, make her own personal reader, perhaps a buddy reader, a 4th or 5th grade buddy reader.
And then to, add technology into it.
Certainly. Yeah, and we'd still love to hear your apps if you all have app suggestions. I think we're going to turn it over to Angela Stokes for a final closure. But again, thank you all very much.
I feel like everybody here today is kind of a webinar pioneer. So for the teachers at Albemarle County who jumped in to participate, we thank you for doing that. And we especially thank Marian and Vicki for being willing. Territory today that's a little bit unfamiliar and new to all of us. It's just been brilliant. Thank you guys so much, too, for looking at the positive about this young person and really starting with that, and then for really reviewing the next steps that you guys are thinking about taking with this young learner.
I can, you can. We can change the world. I can, you can. We can change the world.